Hello friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and I am going to make a traveler's notebook. It's been a long time since I have made one of these, and I know I have a ton of these mini notebooks that are blank lined notebooks. They're really perfect for this type of project. I thought I would use these card front panels from the storybook collection. They're gorgeous, and I've got some pattern papers from the Paper Pad Club by Not Too Shabby. Now this notebook measures it's like just under 4 inches wide by 5.5 tall, which is actually perfect because I'm going to make this traveler's notebook out of 6x6 paper, which normally, I think when I've seen or even made them in the past, I've always done these with like a large sheet of 12 by 12. But I'll show you how to do it with just 2 sheets of 6x6. I'm using the same pattern so that it looks nice and seamless because we are going to have to piece together 2 sheets. Now that first score line I scored at 4.25. And then I'm gonna score a couple of extra lines that are 1/4 inch apart. So 4.25, 4.5, 4.75, 5, and then we will cut it at 5.25. And the effect of this is going to be that we'll have one fold that's going to be where the cover meets the spine. And then there's going to be 3 score lines where I can have the spacing just perfect for putting my holes for this traveler's notebook. So I'm going to do the same thing with the back. I'm going to score every 1/4 inch. Now when you score the back, make sure you're scoring from the left side because we're going to overlap the spine. And again, this gets cut to 5.25. So for your back cover, your score lines are going to be on the left. This matters if you have directional paper, which this faux glitter cardstock, it's non-directional on the front side where the outside covers will be seen, but it is directional on the inside. So I do want to pay attention and make sure that for my front cover, the spine is going to be on the right, and for the back cover, the spine is on the left. And now I'm going to tape these together using some strong adhesive. So we have a 1 inch, essentially this will end up being a 1 inch spine, and the cover itself will measure 4.5 wide by 6 tall. And one thing that you want to, I always want to take note of is you want the front to be the nicer looking. So you want to make sure that when you go to adhere this, that the seam is on the back edge. So when you're looking at this from the front, it has the nice folded edge. And when that is lined up perfectly on across the top and bottom, you can burnish it. And there we have a single piece that you can now laminate. Now, normally I would use my laminator because I have a couple. I have actually just like a basic Amazon basic laminator, which is pretty inexpensive. But I have the Mink Cinch, which can also do lamination. And so what I thought I would do instead of hot laminating though is I used cold lamination sheets the other day. And the only reason why I know about cold lamination sheets is because I read the term when I was reading the instructions for how to use the Mink Cinch, because there's setting that you can do either with the same button press. You push once, I think it was, for cold lamination, twice for hot lamination, and then 3 times for foiling. And when I read cold lamination, I didn't even know what that was. I'd never heard of it before. that led me down the path of searching Amazon for cold lamination sheets, and I bought some, and then I promptly forgot and didn't use it for like a year or two until I made the custom luggage tags from an earlier video. I'll link to that if I can remember to. And but I didn't actually run it through the machine because cold lamination is so easy, you don't even really need a machine. But I thought in my video today I will actually run it through the machine just to see if it makes a difference at all. So I have cut down one of the card front panels so that I have a nice little border all the way around. And you do want to make sure that before you laminate that you decorate whatever you're going to decorate it now, but you have to kind of keep it fairly low profile. Now, cold lamination doesn't require any heat, and so I didn't really need to turn my machine on as early as I did because you don't have to wait for the machine to warm up or anything. Because it's still going to take me a little bit of time to get the lamination sheets onto my traveler's notebook cover here. Now, I do want the classic, lamination where it's laminated front and back. One of the nice things about cold lamination is that it's really easy to laminate on one side, because with the hot lamination, you have to put, you have to use both sides of the, because they get sold in those like kind of pockets, and so you have to always laminate front and back. Now, there are tricks of the trade for just laminating one side if you want. But so it's possible to do with hot lamination, but it's really easy to do with cold lamination because these sheets are really just plastic that has an adhesive behind it. And all I've done is cut a piece larger than what I need in both directions. And I am going to apply this to both sides of my cover. Now, the tricky part and why this is a little bit harder than hot lamination, your front and your back laminate is attached. It's like a little folder. You just slide whatever you want to laminate between those two sheets, and because they are sort of sealed on one end, it's really easy to line up, and then you just feed that through your machine. Well, a little bit harder when you have to do each side individually, but I managed okay. And so now the first side's actually kind of easy, but the second side, I've cut this to the exact same size as my first sheet, which again is about, half an inch taller and wider. And what I'm aiming to do here is line up these two sheets. Now, I know they are, I cut it to be wider than what I need, but I'm still trying my hardest to line it up perfectly. And I totally forgot that first time around. I've got one of these big squeegees, so I'm going to use this to prevent bubbles. But in reality, I've used this cold lamination only a few times now, but I've never gotten a bubble. I mean, it's really easy to work with, it seems. So I'm going to still do a little bit of a burnish just around all the edges, really make sure up close against the cardstock I burnish as well as I can. And I'm going to cut evenly any excess of that plastic. And I know that my lamination sheets weren't like exact, so they weren't square. So all I'm doing is I'm gauging straightness based off of my actual pattern paper, the cardstock covers, as opposed to the edges of the plastic. And I'll round the corners later. I'm just gonna feed this through the machine now and see what happens. So in theory, what's happening as this is going through the machine is there's already adhesive, so it's not applying any heat in order to kind of melt the adhesive to each other and to the project, but it is applying pressure as it goes through the roller. So in theory, if you don't burnish, tend to burnish really aggressively like I do, that would really help. But I love how crystal clear these sheets are, and I can't personally tell if running it through the mink cinch really helps to make a more well burnished, because I didn't have any air pockets anyway. So I maybe one of the next time I try this, I'll like intentionally try to leave an air pocket and see if having it go through the rollers will roll out that air pocket. I'm not too sure, but it is kind of nice to have the machine, but it's also nice that you have an option for laminating your traveler's notebooks, even if you don't have a lamination machine or you don't want to get one. I mean, as inexpensive as I think some of them can be, it's still money. So, get some cold lamination sheets and just burnish really well. I think that would work just as well. Now I'm gonna re-score these lines. Now that it's been run through the plastic, it has kind of straightened out, stiffened up a little bit. But because I scored it initially and gave it a little bit of a bend, a little bit of a fold initially, the paper does have a little bit of memory. And so that does help when we get to this point we're scoring through some plastic. So that's the traveler's notebook, all laminated. And one of the things that I realized is that these cold, and I don't know if it's in particular specific to the type that I bought, but it's a very soft plastic. The hot lamination sheets, that at least the ones that I have, once it's been heated and rolled through, it's actually pretty stiff, pretty rough plastic. But this is soft, which is kind of nice, I think. Now the glitter on the front cover, it's a little bit hard for me to see the score lines. So what I'm gonna need to do is put some black dots on those score lines. Remember, the score lines are a quarter of an inch apart from one another. So all I'm aiming to do is, I know that the card front panel that I use, it's just smaller because I trimmed it down a little bit. It's just a smidge smaller than, actually, it might be the same size as my notebook. So I was using, yeah, it's the same height. So because it's the same height as my little mini notebooks, I can use that as a placement gauge for where to punch my holes, because these holes are going to be where we thread some elastic cording through, and the elastic cording will be what holds those little mini notebooks in place. But you can't, you have to kind of set these holes so that they are just either exactly, the height, at the top and exactly at the bottom of where your notebooks will sit, or just a smidge inside. And that should be enough to hold your notebooks in firmly. You don't want those holes to be wider than the height of your notebook. And then, so the holes that I punched on those 1/4 inch, I did 3 of them, because remember we had 3 1/4 inch score lines there. Those holes were 1/8 of an inch, and technically I do have 1/8 inch grommets, but I can't fit 3 of them across there. Not with the spacing that I have going on there. Through the center, right on the middle score line, I put a 3/16 inch hole, and I will put a grommet through that. And that hole needs to be a little bit bigger because it's going to be another stretch of cording, elastic cording, that will sort of act as a little bit of a belly band to kind of keep this journal, this traveler's notebook, as it fills out. If it starts to get super chunky, this will hold it closed. And so I'm going to use my big bite to set my grommet. And I don't know if you saw, I have a label at the bottom of my big bite so I remember what settings I need for. I mean, I always use the same. I always use a two-piece grommet. So it's the eyelet at the top and the washer at the bottom. And the settings on the big bite depend on whether you have the washer or not. But since I only ever use those two in both the sizes, I I just put a little label at the bottom so it's easy for me to remember. Now this is that elastic cording that's going to serve as our little belly band. And the way that I like to attach this to my notebook is I like to use these, I think they're called barbed metal clips. And the idea is that they, you kind of attach it to the ends of your elastic, and there's on one end of the metal, there's two sort of flaps that have a little bit of they each have some teeth to them, and you just use what I'm using, like a flat pliers, and you just crimp that metal. I try to crimp it so that the teeth actually bite into the elastic so that it's really holding that elastic secure. And what's nice about it is that it actually will stop the elastic from being pulled through that hole, but you can always take it out and feed it back through again if you need. It just lessens the bulk inside your traveler's notebook. Now, when it comes to threading your the cording, this is the same elastic cording, happens to be 2mm cording. I start on the inside and I go out from the middle hole. And then the pattern that you want is when you're on the outside, you're going horizontal. When you're on the inside, you're going vertical. And then when you're done, what you'll end up with is two strands in the middle hole. I didn't film it, but I did widen the middle hole just slightly by punching it a second time with my big bite, but just like nudging it over just a smidge, like a fly's eyelash, and then punching it just to widen that middle hole a little bit so that it can accommodate two strands of this elastic cording. And I used to use 1.5mm elastic cording, and you wouldn't think that it made a big difference, but I definitely like the 2mm better. I feel like it is a little bit chunkier, but I feel like it's more secure. The 1.5mm felt a little bit flimsy, like it won't hold a notebook in there. I think it would probably do just fine, but 2mm is kind of my favorite. Now, I also made myself like a little charm, and I put a little lobster claw on one end, and so this can just clip to the top where we've got our little cording going across the top. It's just fun little extra, and the thing is that, you know, this notebook isn't built to last forever, but that little charm, you can always, because it's just on a lobster claw, you can always just unattach it and then, you know, attach it to something else if you wanted. Now let's make a pocket folder. So this is 8.5 by 11. I scored it at 5.5. And then what I'm doing is kind of moving it so that I can see how deep of a pocket do I want. And ultimately, that's up to you, whatever you prefer. I ended up cutting 3.25 inches off. And so that leaves me with a 2.25 inch pocket. And then I rotate, and along the 8.5 inch edge, I scored it in half at 4.25. And along the two sides, I scored it at 1/4 inch. And then what I'm gonna do is cut off. So the 1/4 inch there, it's really just meant to be the sides of the pocket. So on the top portion, the 5.5 inch portion, I'm gonna cut along that 1/4 inch score line on both sides, and then I'm gonna miter cut the glue tab. And the reason to do it the pocket this way is just so that you have the full width. So you're going to end up with this, the final size folded will be a 4-inch wide pocket by 5.5, and it'll be like a little folder. And so in the center though, we need to unattach these. So what I want to do is just like a little miter cut. So I put a dot where all the lines intersect, all the score lines intersect. And I put another dot 1/4 inch away from the score line at the bottom edge, to the one dot to the left, one dot to the right. Now you can use your trimmer to trim this. Just make sure that you line up those two dots. Or you can take your metal ruler and a craft knife, or I use a utility blade. You line up your knife against those two dots and trim it away that way. But the end effect is the same, where you're basically trimming from the bottom of what will be your pocket to the edge. And that gives you, again, just like a little bit of a mitered edge. That's not going to glue down. That's going to stay open so that we can get in and out of the pocket. But it just has a nicer finish, and then there's no bulk in the center when this pocket folder is folded in half. And now to complete this, all you have to do is just fold in the edges. That little 1/4 inch tab, I'm going to use a combination of double-sided dry adhesive just so that it has a nice instant grab. But this isn't that wide of a glue tab, so I'm going to put some liquid adhesive too, just to really make sure that it's secure, because you don't want to put stuff in here and then, have this fall apart and the contents fall out. Now, the contents are not likely to fall out from the other end of the pocket, mostly because that is going to be, it's on the inside of your pocket. And so when it's closed, when this folder is closed, it should be, protected from falling out. So that's kind of like a fun little, you could use it maybe as a divider. So this traveler's notebook, it has 4 strands. So you can do any combination of things on there that you want. You can do 4 notebooks, you can have 2 notebooks and 2 of these pocket folders, whatever you want. So I'm gonna have 3 notebooks and 1 pocket folder, and that's how it will sit. So it just sits perfectly inside there. It ends up being basically the same size as our notebook, and that works out perfectly as well. And I'm gonna do some corner rounding on this. Now, I think technically you could probably quarter around the bottom, even though the pocket's down there, because it's not likely you're gonna put something in that would fall through. But I didn't want to risk it, so I only corner rounded the top and I left the bottom squared. But we have so many of these fun storybook royalty card fronts that I thought it would be really fun to decorate this little pocket folder with some more of these card front panels, just to make them a little bit extra special. And so I trimmed them down just so that you can, with these full scene panels, this project is really great for them because it gets to really highlight the whole thing, and it's very minimal how much I'm trimming off, and that's mostly so that I just have a nice little border of the solid color cardstock all the way around. But this you could easily just, if you wanted, just cut this to the exact size because it fits perfect. And you could have edge to edge, just this scene. But I kind of like continuing the border because the cover has a border. So that's glitter border on the front. So I kind of want to be consistent with that. And I decided I'll put another one on the back too, just because normally I don't always decorate the back, but I figure in a notebook you're kind of flipping forwards, you're flipping back, so it might be nice to see something pretty when you're going from back to front. I didn't decorate the back of my actual traveler's notebook cover though. I left that pretty plain. But this one might be nice to decorate since it's on the inside, and you're probably more likely to see this way more often than you would look at the back cover of the traveler's notebook. So I'm gonna get this glued in, and then the thought occurred to me, well, if I'm decorating these with the extra card front panels, why not also decorate the mini notebooks too? Well, I was thinking maybe I would put more on the inside of the pocket, but I decided against that because once you start filling the pockets with things, I feel like you're not gonna really see anything super pretty on the inside of this pocket folder. But it might be really cool to decorate, and functional also, to decorate the actual notebooks, because right now they look identical. But if you have a different notebook, maybe, I don't know, assigned to a specific thing, then having a way to tell them apart from one another without, going through the contents might be really useful and practical. Plus, it's pretty. So I decided to pull out some more card front panels. I just fall in love with card front panels the more and more I craft with them. I feel like they make projects like these, they just really elevate it. So again, I'm gonna trim but minimally so that I get just a little bit of that craft color of the mini notebook cover showing through. And then this way you can have a way of identifying each notebook. So if you have one of these notebooks is for maybe your work ideas, maybe one notebook is for meal planning, maybe another notebook is for I don't know, card ideas or something. Now you can kind of assign a particular storybook character to that, and it's going to be a lot easier to remember than the order that you put the notebooks in, or at least for me, it would be a lot easier to remember. Now, I did have to trim a little bit because the card front panels are 4¼ by 5½, but I didn't trim too much, so you really do still appreciate the full scene without losing too much of it. And it's so easy. It's super simple. I love that there are different characters because I think that makes it really easy to, remember the once you have it assigned in your head, to however you're going to use that particular notebook. I feel like it makes it really easy, and you don't have to like label it on the outside or anything. And you could probably do a little bit more if you wanted to dress up these little mini notebooks, but I feel like this is the sort of thing that it's not meant to like live forever. And so I don't feel like I need to put like a ton of decorating into it, but I do want it to look nice because it will take some time, to use up these notebooks. And the nice thing about the Traveler's notebook cover and the whole system of a traveler's notebook is that these mini notebooks are swappable. So you can change the order that you have them in. But more importantly, when you fill up one of these notebooks, you can take it out and put a new one, swap a new one in. And I just love the fact that they are basically, just a smidge smaller than the card front panels. It just makes it really easy to decorate with your card fronts. So here is the final notebook. There's a little bit of slack on my belly band just because, as this gets filled out, the pages, even just using the pages, you don't even have to really put anything dimensional in, but just as you use the pages, there's going to be more separation between them, and it will just by nature get a little bit more chunky. Right now, everything is super compressed, super flat. So it's nice to have that elastic belly band. And having that little folder is really nice too, because then you can tuck things in if you need. And I just love how this turned out. I hope you did too. I'll leave links to everything in the description box below. They'll include the mink cinch if you are interested in that, but I don't think that's super required. I think those cold lamination sheets are a great alternative to needing a laminator to do lamination. And because the traveler's notebook is something that piece can be reused quite a lot, if it stays in pretty good condition, it is nice to actually laminate it so that it's sturdy and it can withstand, the stretching of those elastic bands. Thanks so much for checking out my video today. Until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye.